and welcome to Kirly-sue's Plant-Based Kitchen, where I, your host, Kirly-sue, will be talking to you about all things plant-based. So today's topic is about avoiding food waste. And I managed to find an expert on this topic because according to a website called wrap.org, around 20 million tons of food waste is generated each year. About 70% of that food waste was intended for people to eat. That's just in the UK. That's a huge and quite disturbing statistic, considering that we have so many people who are forced to use food banks. And this is kind of sad when a lot of food is just being thrown away. So I've got with me today Laura, who is a food waste columnist. She has a social media presence. But hello, Laura, tell us a bit about yourself. She's also called Reduction Raider.
Hey, I guess I feel like I'm a little bit of an average Joe who just sort of took an accidental interest in food waste, really. I guess initially it started seeing food, to avoid food being wasted, you often see it reduced in supermarkets before it's binned. So it sort of started by buying the reduced food in a shopping aisle. I mean, really, essentially to save money. And I guess that was maybe about 9 years ago now.
Oh, a long time.
Yeah. So I've been sort of shopping in this way a long time, actually, because it then sort of progressed to all I would shop for is surplus food, and it's since progressed to if it's not shopping for surplus food, it's food that I'm picking up for free. And I guess it was my own personal journey with food shopping and buying reduced food and experimenting in the kitchen and being able to make use of what I had that really prompted my interest in food waste. And I guess from there it just grew. I started my Instagram account to show what you can do with food that's heading for the bin and how you can eat well for less, essentially. And I think especially around the time as well that I started up my Instagram account, it was maybe about 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago. And I guess there was a real focus on wellness and superfoods and, and I guess I wanted to show that actually that can still be really accessible. Because a lot of times with that comes a hefty price tag, but actually it can be really accessible. And then I guess, again, as that's grown, sort of after I started up my Instagram account, I became vegan, and so sort of set out to show that you can eat a vegan diet as well without it breaking the bank. And then, that just led to the food waste column and sort of some personal appearances and starting up my own blog. And so I guess the real focus is on how you can lessen food waste at home, how you can make use of what you've got, how you can sort of alternate recipes, substitute ingredients.
Okay, that's really great. So what initially sparked your interest in avoiding food waste initially? Because what was that, what happened, or what kind of gave you that aha moment?
So I mean, growing up, I was a real can't cook, won't cook, and
Okay.
and actually, and not just growing up, sort of well into my 20s. So I probably would have spent quite a lot of money on food if it wasn't takeouts. It was buying stuff that was processed and easy to make, and I didn't really have a clue in the kitchen. I guess it's as I got into my late 20s and I started living alone, there was more onus to be able to cook, and I guess an appreciation of how much food costs, because you're responsible for it. And then I was at work, and a work friend of mine, he really thrifty, and he always brings in his own lunch, and he used to come in with his lunch and he would have these yellow stickers on there, and I was saying, what's this? And he was explaining that supermarkets will reduce food to avoid it being binned. So, and I'd never seen this before, so after he explained it, I started looking down the aisles and I was getting so excited. And, you know, I think maybe the first thing I got might have been a packet of donuts, but I was like, you know, over the moon. Oh, wow, you can get this for like 10p or 50p or whatever that was. So I think initially it was the real high on how much money I was saving, because some of these discounts can be like 75 to 90%, you know. So I was just sort of ecstatic. I would come home with my shopping and I would work out how much it should have cost compared to how much it did. So I guess the financial cost was the real driver to begin with. But I think sort of what happened over time was, because I'd get so excited about the food that I was getting, I would be experimenting with what I had. So I'd be looking at recipes to think, okay, well, how can I use this? And then it was prompting me to try new things. You know, something as simple as I'd never eaten radishes. And then when I'd see them, in the bag for 10p, I was thinking, all right, you've got no excuse now, give them a go. And then I would just sort of look up recipes. Well, what can I do with this? And at the time I was eating meats, it'd be maybe, well, what can I do with mince? And yeah, and then I guess as time grew, it really opened me up to food. You know, nobody would describe me as a fussy eater anymore, quite the opposite. And, you know, and it really sort of, I guess, made me really confident actually in the kitchen, and sort of really confident in terms of using my own initiative and my own autonomy. And so actually I think as time has gone on, you know, the benefits far outweigh the financial costs actually. You know, it's really improved my relationship with food. And I think, you know, when as time went on, it really opened my eyes to actually that this food was going to be wasted. And, you know, and on the back of that, I've volunteered with food waste charities. And, you know, so I think it was a gradual transition. And but yeah, I think sort of as my personal food shopping habits changed, I became almost more aware of what was going on outside my four walls.
Right. So it was through you, and I think I saw it on your Instagram account, Reduction Raider. You spoke about the app called Oleo, Olio.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah.
It's an amazing app, because when you featured it, I thought I never knew something like this existed. Tell us about Oleo. It's amazing.
I love Oleo. It's my favourite app, and if you do one thing today, download it. It is brilliant. So essentially, Oleo is a food waste app. So, but people share food on there. So, for example, if you're moving house, or you're going on holiday, or you've changed your diet, or you bought something and you just think, I don't like that, you can list it on the app and people will see it and they can request it. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of really community based as well. So, for example, you think, okay, you've got too much bread, you're not going to get through it. You put it on the app. I say, oh, great, Kirly-sue's got this bread, and I'd send you a message and say, can I come round in an hour or so? And, you know, so it's a sharing app. And also what you have on there now more and more is stores are using the app, but via volunteers. So for example, they've just sort of established a partnership with Tesco's. So anything that Tesco's haven't given to charity or hasn't been bought through reducing it in the yellow stickers, a volunteer can go and collect that from Tesco's, and they will then list it on the app, and people can see it and pick it up. And it is fantastic. And actually at the moment I'm doing a bit of a challenge where I can see how long I can go without food shopping. And today is day 41.
Oh my goodness. Day 41. Wow.
Day 41. And,
congrats. Round of applause. I'm impressed. 41 days without going food shopping. How have you done that?
Yeah, no food shopping. I mean, I've eaten out with friends and socially, but I've not done a food shop at all. So, I mean, I guess hugely from Oleo, you know, I've picked up so much surplus food. And also, I think once you get the conversation going about food waste, people, they also become a bit more aware. You know, like a friend said to me yesterday, oh, you know, she's cooked so much rice and she's not going to get through it all. And she said, you know, do you want a tub of it? And I said, great, I'll make a stir fry tonight. And so I think once you, and then also she said, oh, actually, my mum made a dal and, it's vegan, so would you like some of that? So I think it really gets the conversation going. And so, and I guess as well, it's being prepared to be open with the food that you have, so I guess I sort of, in terms of how I use food, how I cook, it will be based on what I have, rather than, I guess ordinarily what perhaps somebody might do is they think, I want to make this, or I've got this recipe, and they go out and get the stuff. My starting point is always, what do I already have at home, and then what can I make with that? And it'll be as simple as that. And so I guess in terms of the no food shopping, it's been extending that really. I think the struggle has been not so much the main meals. Main meals are quite easily covered actually. It's been things like snacks. So, in the last 41 days, I baked biscuits, I made my own pastry for pie, I've baked a cake,
Check you out. Amazing.
And I mean, I suppose I'm definitely not, a chef or, a established baker, but I think it's actually when you start thinking outside of the box and you think, okay, well, if I'm not going to go food shopping, I'm not going to buy snacks, what can I do? And things like flour, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but I always end up with bags of it that are just sort of sitting around for ages, because we don't, unless you're a baker, you don't tend to really bake on a regular basis. So you're perhaps not going to go through sort of flour as you would fruit and vegetables and, sort of your staples. So they can sit there for a long time. So I've found the challenge really great, actually, because I think had I not been doing that, even if it was going to pick up stuff on Oleo or buying reduced stuff, that probably would have been my first point of call. But actually, when that's taken away, it encourages you to do something different. And then it's not just the food that you do, it's the sense of achievement as well, that actually you think, well, I've done this, because I think sometimes we shy away from doing something because it feels a bit daunting or outside of our comfort zone, so something like making pastry for a pie, I'd be thinking, I don't know about that. And, and I was a bit nervous doing it, and I had my sister on the phone saying, do you think it'll be all right using wholemeal flour rather than plain flour, because that's what I've got? And, but actually when you've come away and you've done it, you feel sort of really proud of yourself, actually. And so I think there's the sense of accomplishment, and it just spurs you on to use more and more of what you've already got, or also thinking about where can that go.
With the Oleo app, what I learned from the app is there's like a forum in there where people can comment. And there was one lady in there, she was a nurse and she had 2 children. She was a single parent. And she says, I'm so grateful for this app, because if I didn't use this, we wouldn't really eat. And when I read that, I thought, right, that's it. Because I get a lot of stuff from different brands, because I have a presence on social media. They say, oh, do you want to try this? Do you want to try that? So they send me a lot of stuff, which I personally can't eat all of it. So I give it away. So I put a lot of stuff on Oleo, particularly when I'm making recipes for my YouTube channel. Sometimes I make big batches, and I think, and sometimes I make it twice, because if I'm doing an online cooking show, I usually make the recipe, the final version of it first, and then I'm showing them the process. So in essence, I'm cooking it twice. So I thought, well, I don't need to. So I just put them on Oleo. Also, just before the lockdown, my church was going to have a concert, a musical gospel concert, and they were going to sell food. And they asked me to make some cupcakes. So I made, I think, 40 or 50 cupcakes. But because the lockdown came just as we were going to do the concert, the pastor of our church said, look, we can't, because of social distancing, we cannot have the concert. So I was stuck there with 40 cupcakes. So I thought, what am I going to do? I thought, I'm not that greedy. I'd eat 40. I mean, I have a sweet tooth, but no, not 40. So I put the cupcakes on Oleo, and honestly, loads of people messaged me. One lady said, shall I bring my own Tupperware? And I'm like, no, it's fine. I've got Tupperware for you. It was amazing. And lots of people come, and they're kind of different people from different backgrounds. They don't necessarily, because in this country, poverty looks different to other countries. We have a stereotypical view of somebody who's poor is going to look a certain way, and people can be hungry and you won't know unless they tell you.
Absolutely. And I think that's the wonderful thing about the app, because it's, first and foremost, it's a food sharing app. So I think the difficulty is, I think when it comes to, you mentioned earlier food banks, and I think some people can feel a sense of stigma when it comes to approaching a food bank, whereas something like Oleo, you can collect food and nobody has to know anything about your circumstances, whereas I think, food banks are fantastic, but I think some people can be put off perhaps by having to apply or
there's a criteria.
Absolutely. And I think and that can be, I think, off-putting for people, and like you said, especially perhaps if it's maybe been a change of circumstances. I mean, I think there's a lot of things attached to it, whereas with Oleo you can just collect, and and that's it. You see the food you want to get and you get it, and I love that it crosses all sorts of sort of societal differences, I guess. So it doesn't matter your background, your race, your socio-economic background, everybody can use it. It really promotes this community field. I think it's actually really amazing. And when you mention lockdown, I think a lot of businesses suffered because suddenly restaurants were unable to operate, so they've actually got all of this food that needs to go somewhere. And and at the start of lockdown I was picking up things like like bottles of sauces that were clearly used in restaurant kitchens to cook in bulk, because suddenly there was all of this food that businesses were unable to use
up.
And it's and so I think it's fantastic. And even actually, I remember when I went vegan, suddenly there was stuff that I had at home that had milk in it, and so it's a really quick fire way of just being able to say, well, I'm not going to use this. Is there somebody else out there that will? And it's been really fantastic during the pandemic, because with Oleo you can do non-contact collections at a social distance. People can leave stuff on the doorstep and you just get it, and so it's really innovative.
I've got a couple of tips, because sometimes you can have an item and you think, oh, no one's going to want this, and I would beg to differ. Twice it's happened to me. There was a particular brand, which I won't name, who sent me these particular bars to try. So I thought they were just going to send me 2 or 3, and they sent me a massive box of them, and I tasted one, and honestly, I did not like them. And it wasn't as healthy as they said it was, because when it came, it was it was vegan, but it was kind of very chocolatey, and so I didn't really like them. But there was a box of like 30 of these bars that were like, like a cereal bar kind of size, quite a big cereal bar. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I put them on Oleo, and I had so many people say, actually, I've heard of those bars. Can I have 5? Can I have 10? If you've got any left, blah, blah, blah. And people were really grateful for them.
Absolutely. And I think this is the thing, almost when you say, how can you go 41 days without shopping, like, actually, I think when you're sort of in a privileged enough position where you have a regular income, you have a roof over your head, it's not actually as difficult as you may think, and that is sort of one of my, that is my first food waste tip, actually, for anyone looking to avoid how much food they waste, is start with shopping within your home, because actually, a lot of us are sort of blessed enough to be in a relatively secure situation. And actually, if you start from what you've got at home, there's probably so much more than what you realise. And dear friend of mine, and I hope she's not listening because she's probably going to hate me for exposing her.
So we won't say no names.
We'll say no names.
Yeah.
But she's not confident in the kitchen. So often if I'm at her house and I'm saying, oh, do you know what, I'm getting a bit hungry, she says, oh, I don't know what you're going to eat, there's nothing here. And I open the cupboards, there's plentiful food, but it'll be things like perhaps packets of rice, dry pasta. And I think because she's not confident in the kitchen, it's almost like I've got no food. It's not that she's got no food. It's almost just like, I don't know what to do with what I have.
Yeah.
So actually, and so I think that needs to be the starting point, and perhaps being open to experimenting. And there was a time that my sister and I was having a bit of a disagreement because we was making these stew to go with yam. Actually, she was saying we've got to go and get tomatoes, and I'm saying I'm not going to get tomatoes. I've got coconut milk in the house. We'll use the coconut milk. And she was really upset because she was sort of saying no, it needs to be tomatoes. And I wasn't budging, so we used the coconut milk. And actually, when we did that, she was really impressed as to how good it tasted. So I think something like that is just quite a small it's a small action, but it has a huge impact, because I think otherwise the alternative is you go and buy more food, so you go and buy those tin of tomatoes whilst you've got food at home that can be utilised.
There's something that I saw somebody do once, and what she does is go to her food cupboard, and see what's in there and look at what could possibly go together. Put those ingredients into Google, and then you can find a recipe to use up those.
It's exactly what I do. Yeah. And it's exactly what I'm doing. And if there's anything that I'm unsure about, I'll just Google it. So recently, actually, that's another thing that I made during the No Food Shop, is I made falafels. So, but rather than using chickpeas, I used, I did use chickpeas, but they were dry green chickpeas rather than, ordinary chickpeas. Yeah, that I would have used. So I used those. And, and what I did was, I've got a sage plant that a friend got me. And so I was thinking, well, really, I want to make use of this sage because it grows in abundance. So then I thought, okay, well, let me just Google it. So I Googled sage falafels, found a recipe for sage and rosemary falafels, and I had rosemary in the freezer, because that's another thing that I do regularly, is I freeze a lot of food. And so I made those falafels, and they were gorgeous. And actually, this is why I quite enjoy it when I start from a position of not having a lot in, or in what you probably would think. I like that position. I like it when I'm not food shopping, because it when they sort of say less is more, it's so true. Sort of like, the less I have, the more I'm able to make, the more it brings me.
Yes. So what would you say are your top tips for avoiding food waste? If somebody says, oh, I'm new to food waste, I don't really know anything about it, what would you say are some of your top tips as a beginner, for a beginner?
So I guess I've covered the shop from your cupboard, shop from what you've already got. Food storage as well, really important. So, I freeze so much. I mean, back when I ate meat and fish, I would freeze that. But now it's like bread, cakes often, herbs, fruit, veg. If you've made a meal and you've got leftovers, put those in a container, freeze them. There's so much that you can freeze. Milk. So, so start thinking about food storage as well. And if you're not sure, look it up. So if you're not sure how something should be properly stored, there's a wealth of information on the internet. So look it up. So, and that will prolong the life of food. Another big tip is sort of get to understand the difference between display until best before use by date, because actually that's something that I get a lot of on my Instagram account, is people messaging me saying, this is past its best before date, would you use it? You know, a best before date is essentially saying this is when a food is at its best. It's not referring to food safety. It's talking about food quality, and it's not a legal requirement. So actually there's no legal requirement to have a best before date, you know. So all they're essentially saying is this is when we think it will be at its best. They're not saying it's unsafe to eat. So I think, you know, so whereas with a use by date, yes, that does refer to food safety. So, you know, it's not to say that if you was to buy stuff on its use by date, there's not ways of extending its life, you know, such as freezing, cooking it up on that day. So perhaps doing a batch cook, and, you know, you could cook something and then freeze it. But yeah, get to know the differences. And again, if you're not sure, look this up online. Because often as well, you know, food is, you know, when people produce food, I mean, they do it for it to last, you know. So when things are tinned, you know, the tinning of food has come about to preserve it, you know, for us to be able to have access to that food in sort of whatever the conditions. You know, so, and likewise, if there's something that's pickled or it's in oil or perhaps dried fruit, you know, these processes are used to preserve food. So get familiar with dates, and I think, and also experiment in the kitchen. You know, don't be afraid of something going wrong. You know, somebody once said to me, well, you know, you must have had a background in cooking to be able to sort of do this, or a confidence to do this. And I said, actually the opposite. You know, like growing up, I was an extremely fussy eater. You know, I didn't cook, I wouldn't cook, you know, I was not somebody that felt confident. But actually, you know, there's so many sort of recipe books out there, you know, follow a simple recipe book, follow a guide. And if you're not sure, Google things. So actually, if you think, okay, this recipe calls for onions and I don't have those, you know, I would just Google, what can I use as a substitute? Or do I need it? And, you know, so I think begin to start to do things like that, because I think often we're daunted by the idea rather than doing it in practice. You know, I think once we bite the bullet and we do it in practice, it's far easier. I think what happens is we think about doing something, you know, it sort of really feels, can feel a little bit overwhelming. So we don't go forth and we don't do it. Yeah, I would say sometimes you just have to do it. You know, it has to be in the doing. So I guess a bit like the pastry, if I sat there overthinking it, I wouldn't have done it. I would have chosen to make something else, you know. I have to actually say, right, just do it, Laura, you know. Or what I might do is quickly put the flour in a mixing bowl so I haven't got time to talk myself out of it. And, you know, so I think experiment, you know, have fun. And because, you know, food should be fun and enjoyable, you know, and, you know, food is nostalgia, and it's community, and it's connection, and it's nourishment, and it's here to, you know, enable us to thrive and keep us alive. So I think begin to enjoy it really, and really start to get connected with it. And I think also actually probably what will happen is sort of on the flip side of that is that the more sort of you build that connection and consciousness around food, less inclined you will be to waste it. Because I think often we waste food because it feels disposable, you know, because actually we've got think, well, I can throw that away, you know, because I've got something else, or, you know, there's such an access to food in sort of Western contemporary society, you know, so food is at our fingertips. If it's not on Deliveroo, you know, there's a shop up the road, there's Uber Eats, you know, like there's 24-hour supermarkets. So I think it's we've almost developed a bit of a disposable attitude to food, and so I think if you try and raise that sort of consciousness, I think you'd be less inclined to waste it.
I agree with you. Adventist radio, a lot of our listeners are Seventh-day Adventist. It's a Christian religion. And we believe, obviously, in eating healthy. Our church doesn't say you have to be, but it encourages you to be plant-based. And also to be aware of your environment and to be kind and so forth. But also, I think wasting food to me is a negative, a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think from a Christian perspective, it's good to try not to waste it because somebody else could have benefited from that food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, and sometimes we don't always make that connection, you know, and it can be, I remember once I was, you know, I was at an event at a university in London, and it was catered, and there was all of these sandwiches left over, and I was saying to staff, what's going to happen with these sandwiches? And they said they will be left out for a period of 2 hours, then they'll be thrown away. And I just thought, I can't see this happen. So I took the platter of sandwich, and, you know, you don't have to walk very far in London to see somebody homeless, and you know, and I passed it on. And, you know, because actually, you know, like you said earlier, it's people are living in food poverty and people are going hungry, you know. So,
and they don't need to. This is the sad thing.
No, they don't need to,
Because I think the statistic is America produces enough food to feed the entire globe 3 times over, but a lot of it ends up in waste. I mean, I've worked in America a lot. I've been to America multiple times, and I can see there's definitely enough food there to feed the whole world 3 times over, because there's almost, I almost want to say there's too much food there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do think we have sort of, no, it's not, but I do think we have a similar thing going on here, you know, and you know, there's a high number of, I can't remember statistics offhand, but, you know, there is a huge number of food that's wasted, and there are people living in food poverty, you know.
10 million tons. 10 million tons is the statistic.
You know, it's a crazy amount, and it could actually be something quite simple. You know, for example, you know, I've been at a restaurant and there's been food that, you know, we've been unable to finish. I put it in a doggy bag and I've offered it to somebody as I've left, you know. And I think, and also what that does is, because I think often there can be a temptation to bypass people that are street homeless, and I think because perhaps it invokes a sense of feeling uncomfortable or guilt, or, you know, whatever that is. And I just think the simpler that of offering somebody something, you know, it's not just that food, is the connection. It's somebody that's initiated a conversation, made eye contact, noticed, you know, because I think that's the difficulty, is that, you know, it's a portion of our society that go unseen.
Yes, but we're going to have to wrap up now. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
It's really amazing. And thank you for all those wonderful tips for avoiding food waste. Just tell us again where we can find you on social media.
The best place is my Instagram, and that's at reduction_radar and the number 1.
Okay, so there, and the app again we were talking about is called Oleo, Olio. Download the app and it's a really good way to distribute food. I know that for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, through our charity called ADRA, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, we've been helping to feed people throughout the lockdown. A lot of our churches have been helping to do that as well. But I would just say to anyone, whether you're whatever background you're from, see if you can reach out and give someone some food via the Oleo app, or maybe a neighbor, a friend, somebody in need. Just share food and avoid it going to waste, because what you think may not be your favorite, somebody else would be so appreciative of that. So I want to say a great big thank you to Laura for Reduction Radar for joining us today. Thank you so much. And for you for listening, and if you're watching us on YouTube, for watching us as well. Eat good, eat clean, eat blessed. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.